My dear friends, do you ever spend time thinking about what heaven is like? I'm sure some of us do. I remember some years ago hearing a description of heaven and hell. First of all, the description of hell. Hell is described as a beautiful banquet hall, banquet room. And in that banquet room, there's a long banquet table and all kinds of delicious food, beautiful dishes and glasses, many waiters and waitresses, delightful music. And then you see all the guests sitting at the table. But there is utter confusion, because the one rule at that banquet hall is that they must eat with spoons that are very, very long. Long, long spoons and long, long forks and long knives. So you have all those people sitting at the banquet table trying to get the food into their mouths with those long spoons and those long forks. And there's utter confusion. It's chaos. The people there are not enjoying the delicious food. And then heaven is described. Heaven is the same banquet room, the same banquet table, those beautiful dishes, delightful food, many waiters and waitresses, beautiful music. And then you see the guests sitting around the table, and there's utter harmony. They're all happy. They're having great fun. And they have to use those long spoons, and they have to use those long forks and long knives. But it presents no problem to them, because they're feeding each other. And that's the difference, in a sense, between heaven and hell. Those in hell were trying to feed themselves. They never thought of the others. And so there was utter confusion. Those in heaven were used to thinking of others. So the long spoon did not present a problem. They just fed each other with the long spoons and the long forks. And I think there's a profound lesson in that story. And in the Gospel of today's Mass, we read about the end times. We're told about the end of the world and some terrible things that are going to happen. And people read today's Gospel and it fills them with fear. And we hear a lot of talk today about the end of the world. Some Christians are convinced that the end is very near. So they keep warning everybody to get ready. Why are we afraid of the end of the world? Why are we afraid of death? I think if we're locked into ourselves, if we're selfish, if we only think of ourselves, we're going to be scared of death. We're going to be scared of the end of the world. But if we're used to reaching out to others and know the joy of reaching out to others, I don't think we're going to be scared of death. I don't think we're going to be scared of the end of the world. I remember hearing one time a statement that really touched me. The statement said that we cannot go to heaven alone. And I think that is so true. We either go to heaven with everybody or we don't go at all. But you see, some of us are locked into saving our own souls. We feel that we're on this earth to save our souls. I want to save my soul. So we get locked into ourselves and saving our own soul. And that's selfish. We should be concerned about the soul of humanity, saving the soul of humanity, not my own individual soul. If I get locked into my soul and saving my soul, I think in a sense I will lose my soul. But if I'm concerned about the other souls and the other people and reaching out to them, then my soul will be saved and everybody's soul will be saved. And I think that's the true Christian message. But you see, there's such a thing as religious greed, spiritual greed. We practice our religion just for ourselves. For example, sometimes people will say to me that they're sad that we don't have private baptisms anymore. That the idea of the church is that we have group baptisms. But you see, the idea of the church is that we baptize all the babies together because we're going to heaven together. We're not going alone. So if I want my private baptism, even though I'm not saying there's anything wrong with private baptism, but the ideal is that we go with the community. You have some people complain. They say, well, Father, I don't want to receive communion from a lay person. I only want to receive communion from a priest. And sometimes I hear that. But again, I think that's selfish. When we say that, then we're thinking of ourselves. We're missing the whole point of the Eucharist. Jesus comes to us through everybody. He doesn't come to us just through the priest alone. You have some people complain about the length of our masses today. They say they're so long. And they remember the days when they were over in 25 minutes. And they say those were great days. But in a sense, there's a selfishness in that. It's like the In-N-Out burger. The In-N-Out Mass. You see, in the old days, somehow we were locked into ourselves. We went to Mass, we didn't have to be too involved with our neighbor. We received our Holy Communion, we jumped into our car, and we went home. And there's a selfishness in that. It's just me and God, and we say to God, God, it's just you and me, and forget the rest. But the whole thinking of the new liturgy is that we're brothers and sisters. And in the Mass, we're supposed to feel our connection to the others. So we receive communion from the lay person, as well as the priest and the deacon. Jesus comes to us through everybody. That's the idea. He wants to come to us through everybody, not just through the priest. But we live in a world of greed. There's tremendous greed in our world. We've got the rich people and the poor people. And some rich people don't even know the poor people exist. We've got the rich nations and the poor nations. There's a lot of greed. And maybe greed is the greatest evil in the world. St. Paul tells us in his writing, he said, avoid greed in all its forms. And avoid religious greed. Avoid spiritual greed. Because we look at Jesus Christ. He came down on this earth. And Jesus wasn't locked into himself. He was forever thinking of others. He died for others. He was forever reaching out to others. His interest was everybody, not just himself. And that's the great example he gives us. We belong to each other. And then he told us the story of the parable of the lost sheep. About the shepherd who was at home, safe, with 99 of his sheep. But there was one sheep lost, and the shepherd couldn't rest. Even though he had 99 of the sheep, he wasn't able to relax with those 99. He was concerned about the one who was lost.